Peace and blessings, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Conversations with Asia. I am your host, Asia Nasir, and the mission of our show is to empower the women of our communities and the girls that they are raising. Today's episode is one that is completely different. I think when you've seen the title and you saw what the topic was about, a lot of you was like, why are we having this conversation on Conversations with Asia, which is a female empowerment platform? And I think it's extremely important that we have this conversation about boys to leaders, raising young men to be leaders from the perspective of how we as mothers and daughters and sisters play a role in our young men in the communities becoming the leaders that they should be. And we have a very special guest. I am so excited. I was hyped about this conversation. I can't wait to dig in. We have a very special guest on today's show. His name is Mr. Robert Cooper Jr. He is a certified family engagement specialist. And when I mention his titles and his certifications, you're going to be like, let's dig into that alone. So he is a certified family engagement specialist, a millennial trauma expert, an author, and not just any author. He's a 6-time author and the founder of the nonprofit organization, Young Men Becoming Men. Welcome, Mr. Cooper, to our show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm honored. It's a pleasure.
I'm really excited. I was so honored that you said that you would actually come on our show. When I saw the work that you were doing on your Instagram page, which is where I found you, I was just like, he has to come on the show. So thank you so much for joining us on this evening.
Thank you. Thank you.
I want to get into, like I mentioned before, when I read your bio, and I was like, okay, what's a family engagement specialist? And the other one is the millennial trauma expert. Tell the viewers that are watching, like, what is that about? You know, like, what does that actually mean and entail?
I specialize in bringing families together to empower them to overcome the trauma. You know, as I was younger, my family, when we had disagreements and miscommunications, we didn't know how to solve conflict. We didn't have no conflict resolution skills. So we got in a dispute. We'll go off into our rooms, or I go outside to play, and we come back. The only time we came back was time to eat, and we laughed and he and talked over the traumatic experiences or the situation without resolving it or apologizing, and then we're right back off to not what we're doing. So bringing families together to help them understand that, you know, their kids, their decision making affects the way their parents view them, but their parent also have to allow them to be able to make the mistake and to be able to forgive them and allow them to move forward. You know, a lot of times as parents, you know, y'all have to be protective and y'all don't want the kids to make that mistake. But in that same aspect, your overprotectiveness is also hindering their growth.
Wow. I think that's an amazing point that you make. A lot of times we just deal with the individual itself and not realize that and we hear it all the time. We hear the term generational trauma, and we don't realize that if we don't heal the trauma, it's going to be difficult to heal. To heal the family. It's going to be difficult to heal that child. So I love the fact that you make it a whole holistic approach as it relates to the family. Now, what does this mean by millennial trauma expert?
I was a young man that was mentally and verbally abused. I know what it feels like to want to be a part of something, but you don't fit and you don't stand out because we all are created differently. And I know it's like to be abandoned by not having your dad there, and you want the relationship that you may see your friend's dad have, and you don't have the steps in life and the principles to be able to understand life as a young man. So that's how I wrote my first book, A Young Man's Cry.
Wow.
It provides young men with the principles of, you know, character empowerment, money management, how to navigate through their emotions, how to be able to communicate effectively. Because we're not taught how to communicate.
Yeah,
because
absolutely right.
First thing will happen to us is when we fall down, we're told what?
Don't cry.
Right. So now, how do we form that emotion? We don't know how to counter that emotion. So what we do, we look at and we become tough and we become withdrawn. We become angry because we don't know how to express ourselves. Or if we do have that frame of being able to express ourselves, your parent may cut that off because, you know, parents allow us to talk to them to a certain extent until it touches on that emotional aspect of where they know they're not doing the full being a full parent.
Exactly. Or you're touching on something that they haven't been healed in or have the capability of dealing with, so they just shut it down. So absolutely, I totally understand that one. You touched in on something that I wanted to share, so I'm glad that you segued into it. When I reached out to you for you to be on the show, because I saw the work that you were doing, in your bio that you sent me, I noticed that you was also you have your own story, and I
Yeah.
want to know, I would love for you to share what that story is, and did it connect with you, then starting your nonprofit organization, Young Men Becoming Men?
Yes, yes. I was mentally and verbally abused by my parents, and I understand what it's like to be able to have somebody degrade you and talk down to you and belittle you. And I know it's like not to have that male figure in your life that you're looking to make that connection with, because as young men we don't understand why our parents are present but not making that investment. And
Mm,
in order for our parents to make that investment, I'm sorry, to make that impact, they first got to make that investment. But if they didn't invest in themselves, how can they make that investment in their children?
right. You can't give what you don't have.
Right.
Absolutely,
So that
absolutely. Without going too deep, when you say you was verbally abused, and then you say you was verbally abused by your parents and emotionally abused by your parents, do you think that that has a bigger impact? I mean, verbal abuse is going to be traumatic on any level. Emotional abuse is going to be traumatic on any level. But does it differ when it's coming from a parent? And if so,
oh
why?
oh yes, yes, it definitely does, because they are the last people you expect to hurt you. You can accept the hurt from somebody on the outside quicker than you can accept the hurt from somebody that hurt you in your family. That's why we defer as a family. We go our separate ways, because for me, I held on to unforgiveness. I was resentful. I had bitterness. I allowed hatred to form in my heart because of how they treated me. It's like, well, if
Mm,
you say you love me in one breath, but then you're able to talk to me this way, or talk bad about me because I'm heavy, or you're able to discourage me because I was able to accomplish something in school, then how can you? So what is
mm,
love to you? So getting the families to come together, understand the family foundation. The family foundation is key, because now we know that, okay, my great grandma, she dealt with being raped. Now my grandma dealt with being raped. Now she don't know how to communicate to her daughter because she didn't have the chance to communicate with her mom. So these are generational cycles that are passed down. This is why families, we are broken apart, because we don't know how to communicate. We always want to make our point. We don't know how to resolve the conflict. Nobody wants to be first to apologize or humble themselves.
absolutely. I remember, I mean, I'm sure you and I were probably raised around the same generation, and it was, and I grew up in that, and I was called the black sheep because I was the one that challenged,
Hmm.
things that my parents said. And it was, you don't question anything. What I say goes, and that's that. So you didn't have even the ability to even express, trying to understand something much, and that's part of communication and
Yes.
learning how to communicate and resolve and process, different things. So I know the challenges that our young girls have, because my nonprofit organization, Jessica Cares, we work with girls, teenage girls, and I see the nuances of, neglect and trauma and things like that. But what do you see is the biggest challenge when it comes to young men? Because the young men are different. What
Yes.
do you see? What do you see as their biggest challenge, even though they're in the same age group?
Not being able to express themselves. That's the biggest challenge. We don't have that opportunity to sit down and say, listen, I feel like this, without being prejudged or without being told you shouldn't feel like that, or being told to shut up.
Now, why do you think that is? Why is it that when young girls, or what do you find is when a young girl expresses, I'm hurt, I'm feeling sad, or someone hurt my feelings, a young girl broke my heart, I mean a young boy broke my heart. We'll sit up here and we'll not coddle the person, but we'll
Right. Because
validate their feelings. We
right.
validate, I understand how you feel. Yes, that's hurtful, and you'll get over it. And, in time, and it may not seem, yeah, I mean, we'll, with the whole conversation. But when it comes to young men, I would love for you, Robert, if you could share what does that sound like when we shut down a young man? Because I want the viewers to be able to hear themselves. Like, do I say that to my son? Am I saying those things to my son? What are some of those things that when we talk to our boys, I'm going to shut those when you say they're expressing themselves? or attempt to, what does it sound like? What do we say to them that's different than what we would say to a girl?
You're quick to nurture, and as a parent, y'all sometimes tend to take the societal norms of raising a young man,
Mm,
and y'all raise them on that aspect of what other people was telling you how to raise a child, but y'all lose the aspect of getting to know your son or your daughter for who they are as a person, because they are individual, but they also have feelings, they also have emotions, they also have dreams, they also aspire to be things, but
so
they
we also
never,
have feelings.
right, and they never allowed to enter in that aspect of it, because it's easier for young ladies to be nurtured because parents, that's nurturing to them. You care a little more for them. But for the
Mhm.
young men, it's like, okay, you got to man up. You got to be able to do this. Like
Mm,
you got to be able to do what I tell you, and you got to follow the direction. You know, because the first thing is you're a young man, but what does that entail? You could tell me
mhm.
a title of who I am, but what does that entail? What are the steps of a young man? What is the mindset? What is the character? What are the
Right.
values? What are the morals of the young man?
Where do you think that stems from, Robert? Where do you feel that stems from when a young lady expresses her feelings? It's almost expected that she expresses her feelings, but when a young boy then, looks to express his disappointment, his feelings of betrayal, his fears, different things like that. Why are words used like you got to man up, suck it up, and different things like that, like why is that?
That's to me, that's another form of saying shut up.
Mm,
You because you want to hear how I feel, but if it's something that you may not agree with, are you going to be able to accept that? That's the key, because most times parents can't accept the mindset of a young man. You know, because the stuff I went through when I was younger, this is something I never shared. As at one point, I dealt with so much that I wanted to kill myself.
mm,
But how are you able to sit down and talk to your parents and say, "Look, I feel suicidal. I feel like you don't love me. I feel neglected. Why is it that
mm,
you're not showing me the love that I thought you would? I desire to build a relationship with you, but I don't want to just do it on the aspect that you have of my sibling. I'm my own individual."
mhm.
So the reason why
And
that
no, go
happens,
ahead.
okay, the reason why that happens is it's easier to shut that down because you haven't built that relationship with your son. You know your son on the aspect of what he's doing wrong. You don't know your son on the aspect of when he do things right. Think about how often did you
Mm,
congratulate your son when he did something well? It was like, okay, that's great, but then you went right to the next thing of what you want him to do better. You never took that time to acknowledge.
and just put a period at the end.
Right, and that's why we get and when you tell us to man up, you're shutting down that emotion. You're not acknowledging the moment that he actually came out to say something to you.
Mm.
The greatest silence is a young man that's withdrawn.
I was just about to ask you that. You're like a step ahead. I was going to
Mhm.
say, when we're dealing, and I love the fact that you're sharing because I want us as mothers, especially that this is what the show is, we're here to empower women and the girls that they're raising. It's good. Like, are we saying those things? Are we saying that to our sons? Are we, and maybe not saying shut up,
Mhm.
but are we saying things that basically translates to our sons as shut up?
Uh,
I,
yes. How about I give this example. He comes to talk to you, you on the cell phone, or you actually have something to take care of. You say, "I get to you in a minute." May not, it may seem minor to you because you're focused on getting that, but that's big to him because it's just that moment. I just need you to hear me for that moment. I don't have a lot to say. I just want you to hear what I have to say for this moment. And then when you're ready to come back and you want me to talk, I don't want to talk because at that
right.
time I wanted to talk, but you had something else that was more important than what I was feeling and dealing with.
Do you find that young boys are just as sensitive as what we perceive young girls to be, or maybe even more sensitive you know, because I'm listening to you and I'm like, and I mean, I have two sons of my own, and I've seen their sensibility. I've seen when, things have hurt them. And especially with my youngest, my
Yeah,
oldest, he's a little more transparent with his feelings if he's comfortable in that setting.
great.
But my young son, I mean, you'll see him holding that emotion in, like,
Right.
I'm not gonna cry, I'm not
Right.
gonna, and
Right.
what do you find that young men are just as sensitive?
Yes, yes, we are. We are sensitive due to the emotional aspect of it because we don't know how to channel that emotion. So when we have
Mm,
that time to be vulnerable, because it's hard for us to be vulnerable. When we be vulnerable and open ourselves up, and we only give you a one chance, honestly. And if you're not able to connect with that moment, we're done. We're not going to open up. We'll give you the surface of what's going on and tell you that we're fine, but we'll deal with it internally. And that's how I became sick with Crohn's disease because I dealt with a lot of my issues internally because I didn't know how to express myself after a while when I had the time to talk and they didn't want to hear me. Say, okay, well, I'll deal with it on my own, but still, while dealing with things internal, you're still angry, you're still bitter, you still resentment. Then you're dealing with things within your mind of why you're here and if you love me, why you treat me like this and how come we can't work this out? And
mm,
then you go out into society and then you see your friends and they'll tell you to do this and you're seeing them to act this way and then you want the attention. So what you gonna do? You're gonna act out.
right.
But then now you get a phone call, the parent get the phone call up there to the school. Now what are you doing? Why you acting like this and why you acting like that? But the whole crowd was I did it in the beginning at home. There were steps and there were signs. I became withdrawn. I tried to talk to you. I felt like I wasn't heard. I get mad instantly.
So that was what I was about to ask you next. Like, we always deal with the young men when incarceration comes in, delinquency, dropping out of school, skipping class, drug abuse,
Hmm.
violent, real violent behavior. It's like,
Right,
oh, now he has a problem.
right.
But that wasn't something that happened overnight. So what
Nope.
are some of the signs that may, for the viewers, that may be missed in their young sons, that they're not seeing as a sign that they feel, as you were saying, they feel neglected? I was trying to open up, you didn't hear, I felt shut down, I didn't feel supported and encouraged. It was always with but you can do this better, all of the things that you just mentioned. What are some of the signs for parents to see that before it even gets to the obvious, that we need to be seeing in our young sons, to say, okay, hey, I need to stop and take a look at this?
Uh, my thing is know them that labor among you. If you know your son is playful, if you know your son is he's upbeat and he's always looking to do something, or he's talking about a goal he want to achieve, or he likes to go outside, if you start seeing him slowly withdrawn, slowly not talk about the things, slowly losing interest in that, see his demeanor is different,
Mm,
his mindset is different. They're the signs. It's subtle. We look for the grand finale, and most of the
right.
time with young men and men, it's not a big thing. We're simple to a certain extent. So it's the little things with us that leads up to us
Mm,
lashing out or holding that, having an attitude, or not being able to communicate.
wow, amazing. And it is so subtle, and that's why, so I think it's not seen for the
Right.
most part until it becomes a bigger problem where you can't deny seeing it at that point. Wow, this is really, I had, like I said, I have two sons. My oldest is 29 and my youngest is 24 now.
Mm.
And my sons grew up in a single parent home. My sons and my daughter, it was the four of us, and it's, we still rock strong,
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of the women that watch our show, and the children that they're raising, they're single parent homes too. And what I want to dig into, it's going to ruffle some feathers, but I think it's something that we need to talk about, because I get the women that come to Jessica Cares and they're like, are you going to put anything on for boys? And my program is for girls.
Yes.
And the reason why I want to ask you this is because they're seeing something, and now that, like I said, it's the
Yes.
obvious that's going on.
Yes.
And a lot of times I hear it, and it's true. I do believe it's true when we say, because their fathers are not active in their
Right.
children's life, or they're not engaged as they should be in their children's life. We say, oh, it's because they don't have a father figure in their life, which I believe definitely
Right.
has a role
Right.
in why a child may be acting out, or a young man may be acting out. However, now this
Right.
conversation is for women, and for the present mother that's in the home, that has the same amount, if not more, effect or impact, because you're present with your child. I want you to talk about how mothers sometimes play into seeing their sons go in a direction or not go in a direction that we know they very much well had potential to go into.
The role the mother plays is
Yes.
it's it's the nurturing aspect that turns into overprotectiveness. And you protect your son and you nurture your son, but at the same time, you're hindering his growth physically and mentally and spiritually as well. Mothers play a role with their mouth. They can beat down their son with their mouth. And it's how you say it. It's not what you say. Because honestly, we can take what you say, but it's how you said it. If you're saying it to degrade me, to belittle me, just so you can feel good, and to tear me down to make you feel better, then that's how most parents hinder their son growth in their relationship, and it tears the relationship apart.
Yeah. I heard a saying that, men hurt with what they do
Hmm.
and women hurt by what they say.
Yes.
So when you just said that women hurt by what they say. Now I want to dig a little bit deeper into that as it relates to what they may be saying to their sons. What are some things that are damaging that we think, oh, that's gonna make him turn around, or that's gonna light a fire under him and make him, turn around? What can we be saying as mothers that is the opposite, is damaging our sons? What are some of those things? Because you were saying that it's not so much what we say, but it's how we say it. What is it? That's what I want our mothers that are listening. What does that sound like to our son? What is being said that is damaging?
The comparison, you compare me to another young man. Why can't you act like him? Why can't you do
Mm.
good in school like him? Or you act just like your father. That's a struggle.
Oh,
That's a struggle we have. We don't know our father, so in that same aspect of how can I act like him? But then you're upset because I may look like him, or you was in a relationship with him, you chose him. So how you gonna take that out on me? And 9 times out of 10, we're taking the traumatic experience that we're dealing with and lashing it out and spill it out on the kids, because it's easier to deal with what your kid and discipline them than to actually sit down and have that moment to yourself to think about why you're angry, to
yeah.
acknowledge why you're angry, to think about, okay, I made a poor choice in who I married or who I dated. That's my fault. Why? And then they have to understand why they don't love themselves.
Mm.
'Cause
So just even saying things like you act just like your daddy, or you end up like your daddy, or you just
Mhm.
like your daddy. Just even in that,
Right,
knowing that, and you were saying it's how we say it. So if we're hearing the tone or the disgust
right,
almost, that you
right.
just like it, it's how do boys translate that?
It's hard being raised by your mom because the communication factor is different. So when you translate that, it messes with the young man mindset when he gets in a relationship with another young lady, because once she comes off, if she's strong or independent, and she comes off and is in a characteristic of his mom, he's either going to shut down or treat her in a manner that he wanted to treat his mom, which is harsh and be
Mm.
harmful to her.
Wow, you are making so many connections here. So when I hear women, because I work with women and they, my husband doesn't listen to me, my husband is not expressive, my husband is not this or that, is that stemming from what we're talking about right
Yes,
now?
yes, that's some of that stemming from that. And then it depends on if the husband is allowed to talk inside the home as well. If he comes to you to be able to talk about a topic, or you're overbearing his leadership, or you're not following his leadership, and you're always over talking him. After a while, as men, we'll detach ourselves from it. So if you want to run it, you can run it. We still do our part as a man, but we're not going to be as involved, and we're not going to be as attentive as we were in the beginning.
Do men have a wall up because of past rejection of,
Yes.
you know, I try to express myself, I try to share how I felt,
Yes.
and I was rejected. And because of the sensibility that we were talking about earlier,
Hmm.
even when married, they won't open up.
No, because it's a big word for us. Vulnerability. That's big. If we're not willing to be vulnerable, we're going to have a wall up, because we don't want to get hurt. We don't want somebody. We don't want to share what we experience in life, and then have it turned around and used against us.
Mm.
So how can I talk to you, and if I tell you something, you take it and you beat me over the head with it? If I show you a mistake that I made when I was younger, and I did something not the exact way, but something similar that mirrored that, you're so quick to jump onto that.
Mhm.
So
So
that's
let me ask you a question then, because this is generational. You have some mothers, and this is, and I'm sure this is for the viewers that are watching on YouTube and on Facebook. And please chime in if you have any questions. If you have a mother who was never raised herself with a father,
hmm
and all she knows is a strong mother.
yes,
My mother did mom and daddy's duties.
yes.
This is all I know. And in turn, I then, got involved with a man who's just as absent as my father was.
Mm,
How does a mother then know? Just like you said, how do I act like my dad when I never even knew my dad? Or
right.
how do women learn how to talk to men, their sons included, when they've never had a man in the home? They've always been surrounded with aunties and grandmas and, their mothers. They never had a strong father or male figure in the home. What can you tell those that want to, like, I know I'm not doing this right, but I don't know anywhere else. I don't know any other way to talk. What do you say to those mothers? How can they turn that around?
Let go the generational mindset that you have. Being raised by strong women, you adopt their character.
Mhm.
So you have to examine what was pouring into you and what you were around, and be able to separate that and understand what the key for all of us in life is. We know we experience, but what do we want to change it, and how do we want to change it? There's a way to change it, but are we willing to make that sacrifice and that work to do the difference? That's why I started Young Men Becoming Men, because I knew I didn't have my father. He didn't love me as he said he did. I knew I didn't spend a time with him as I would love to spend time with him. So that's why I put a program together to be there, to be present. Because in order to make that impact in a young man's life, you first need investment. And if you're not willing to
Mhm.
invest in yourself, you're not going to be able to make that impact in any area of your life as well as who you're raising life.
Do you when you talk about being a certified family engagement specialist, do you work with the mom to be able to learn how to communicate with her son,
Oh yes,
to speak life into him versus tearing him down?
I have a coaching program. Yes, I do an 8-week coaching program that I do with families. And my favorite is the simplest thing. It's the 3x5 card.
Okay.
Everybody writes something down of what they dislike, put it in the box, shake it up. One person pick it up. If your name is on it, if it's something that you wrote, you put it back in the box until you get the person. The key to understand is, okay, you open it up, your son. First thing he says, I don't like how I've been treated. 9 times out of 10, our first response is what? To be defensive and
Defense,
reactive.
right.
Right.
Hmm.
So if you, I tell them take that off the board. And if you take that off the board, you stand there, you read it. After you read it, that person wrote that card. The next person pick up a card until the
Mm.
parent get the card. I love it when the parent get the card because the parent actually gets it. Normally 9 times out of 10, the parent first thing they do is they laugh because it's an issue that they heard before and they're still not ready to deal with it.
Mm. All right. And that is so true. I'm listening to you, and I'm like, I've had those moments
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's hard too. And I think mothers were sensitive as single moms
hmm
because we have so much on our plate. So the minute we hear, well, this aspect of your parenting wasn't as stellar as other aspects, it's like we become so defensive because it's like, well, I'm the one that did everything. I'm the one who stuck around. I didn't abandon you. I worked this thing out. And what do you mean I'm not a this? And we take it like the totality of
Right.
I'm not a good parent,
Right.
right?
But the one I hate to hear is parenting doesn't come with instructions, but being a child doesn't come with instructions as well.
That's
Even
right.
though we are, the parents are designed to instruct us and to guide us. But if you don't have that instruction, I know you're not gonna be able to guide me and give me the proper instruction. So you got to do the best you can do with what you know.
So what do you do when that parent does something like that where they chuckle and laugh or they get defensive? What are some of the tools for some of those that are listening that might be like, you know what, I think I need to take his coaching class? What would be one suggestion? Because I don't want you to give away your program,
No.
but just like one thing that you would tell a parent who would chuckle from, embarrassment, like you
hmm
said, they've heard this before, not ready to deal with it, or defensiveness, like I'm gonna combat this, and this is gonna be combative now. what is something that you would tell the mother to diffuse that situation so that way she can have that open dialogue?
How would you feel if your child laughed at a matter that you have an issue with? You got to make them be able to think about not just themselves but others.
Mm,
I use that a lot because it helps them understand. Because it's still going. I love it because it still brings up their protectiveness, but it also is thought provoking. Because now you got to think, okay, if he was to laugh, I'd knock his head off. But in the same manner, that's my child, so I wouldn't harm him. So I would have to listen. And that's what you have to do with yourself as well. Because your
right,
laugh is making them still feel dismissed.
right, right. Making it, and then makes it, and then that's when we see the after effects of the negative after
Right.
effects in young men. Like, you're going to hear me one way or another, and it
Yes.
usually manifests itself in a negative way,
Right.
violent or something. Wow, this is so insightful. You know, I want to share with you something that happened with me and my son, and I think this happens sometimes with mothers as well when our sons get to a certain age. I know for us as moms, our babies are our babies, whether they're
Always,
our daughters
always.
or especially our sons. There's just something special about it. That's my baby. That's my boy.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
that's my baby. And like I said, I have grown children now.
Yes.
My oldest is 29, my youngest is 24, and I remember my 24-year-old and I were having a conversation, and we were not agreeing. We were not seeing eye to eye. And I remember talking to him, and in the moment I didn't see it, but when we hung up the phone, it's like I reflected, it was replaying in my mind, and I was like, my son didn't say a word. He didn't say anything. And I was mentioning, so I was saying what I had to say. And my son said absolutely nothing. And it dawned on me, I was like, I'm not talking to my son like a 24-year-old.
Right.
I'm talking to him like he's 7 and 9
Right.
in the house. And I called my son back. I called my son back, Mr. Cooper, and I told him, I said, Mommy's sorry.
Yes.
You know, I'm sorry that I said, I understand that you are, and I said, and forgive mommy, because I said, I always see you as my baby. But I was like, I know you're not a baby, and I know you have an opinion, and I have to respect you as a man, even if I don't agree with your decisions. I have to respect you because you are a man. And I remember having that conversation, and he actually then spoke, and he said, Mom, it was just as simple. He said, Mom, I appreciate you saying that.
Yep.
And I told him, I said, I'll be more conscious next time when we talk that my tone reflects the fact that you are a young man now, and I have to respect your decisions, even when I don't agree with them.
Right. And the that's all we want is the acknowledgement of who we are. We know we're still your child. We know we're not gonna ever outgrow that. But at some point, you gotta separate and understand that I am a man,
And that's so hard
and I have
sometimes. Yeah.
and I have grown.
Yeah.
Like you said, you may not agree with it, but look, I'm living my life in a manner where I'm a good citizen. I'm going to work every day. I'm being productive. I could be out here shooting, robbing people for stuff. I could be just sitting in the house doing nothing, wasting my time. But I'm still applying myself. And you don't understand the aspects of once I leave out that door, the stuff I go through, to being shut down, to being told that you're not good enough for this position at job, to being told that what you offer doesn't fit, being told that you don't have what we're looking for. Then you got to deal with the guys. Oh, you go to work. Oh man, you soft man. Who works a job? Yeah, but I don't want to sit on the corner and look over my shoulder the rest of my life. I want to do something for myself and my family. I want to leave a legacy. I want to leave an impact. I want to leave generational wealth. And just that being that part where we don't get the acknowledgement, it's like, okay, well, you still see me as a child. It's like your son did. He didn't say a word because at that moment he felt like he was 7 or 9.
Or he felt dismissed, like you said, like you're
Yes.
dismissing how I feel. Like, I'm telling you as a man how I feel, and you're talking to me like I'm 5 years
Right.
old, and I feel dismissed. And he told me, he was like, Mom, I know, he says, I know when you don't agree with me. He said, it's because I know you care for me and you want what's best for me.
Right.
He was like, I appreciate that. But he was like, Mom, you raised a good man. That's what he told me. He said,
Yep.
Mom, you raised a good man. So he was like, I'm gonna be all right. He was
Yep.
like, he said, I appreciate you calling me back and saying that.
Right.
And it meant a lot to him. It
Right.
really, I could hear it in his voice. It meant a lot that I called him back, and he didn't have to tell me, Mom, I didn't like the way you talked to me.
Right.
So it does mean a lot, and our sons are sensitive to
Yes.
not feeling respected, and not and
Mhm.
that plays into their relationships, Robert.
Yes, it does.
Mhm.
As men, we don't. want to be loved. We rather be respected.
Mm.
So respect.
Dig a little deeper in that.
Res-
Because how does that translate to women when we say when we're dealing with our sons
Mhm.
and raising them to be good men, to be vulnerable in relationships so they can have that? How then do we show that what men prefer is like, yeah, we know we're loved, but we prefer respect. How does a woman internalize that and then act it out?
Well, the key thing you did with your son was you call and you acknowledge where you went wrong.
Mm,
If you can't show me that you make mistakes, we make mistakes as well. But we have to, in order to be able to make that connection, you got to be able to acknowledge, hold yourself accountable. Most times, women don't want to hold themselves accountable because they want to make their point and they want to show where you was wrong at. You know, because y'all would bring out the facts, the stats, and all that stuff of everything that was wrong and what we did wrong. But you never
cut
acknowledge.
off,
Right.
cut, right,
Right.
those
You never
telltale
acknowledge.
signs.
Right. Right. And see, then that shows me that you don't respect me because you're trying to make a point instead of having an open conversation, a mature conversation of where I went wrong. Because if I can understand why I went wrong, okay, then maybe I'll be willing to work on that. But if you're not willing to respect me enough to understand that I made the mistake and give me some grace to be able to fix that, then and then you gotta be able to, be able to respect my decisions. You know, I'm not gonna always get it right. I understand I'm not gonna always get it right. But as a man, there are two things in life that we're gonna have to do. We can either make the mistake and fold, or we can make the mistake and rise. And by rising, we can learn how to navigate through that mistake. Okay, I went to job and I did this and I should have done it this way, but now I got the tools to be able to make that connection, to be able to fix it going forward. That's all we want to do. We're simple. We want to just get to the point. You know, once
So
you
the
tell us,
respect is allowing a young man to grow and giving him the grace to make mistakes along the way, but still letting him know you still respect him.
yes,
If I'm hearing you right,
yes,
that I
yes,
still respect
that's right,
you and
right,
that you can overcome this. You're gonna come out better for this, and kind of reassuring them, kind of
right.
like what we do with our daughters. We need to do the same thing with our sons.
Thank you. That's what I wanted you to get to. Thank you.
Yes, yes. So speaking of that, you have, with me running, Jessica Cares, my nonprofit organization that works with girls, I get it all the time. Moms come to me all the time. I say, when are you going to do a program for boys? And I've been doing Jessica Cares now for 13 years.
Yes.
And I've never had a resource to be able to say, look, there's a Robert Cares, or there's a somebody, that
Yes.
looks like
Yes.
the young men. I never had that. So for the mothers that are listening that are like, oh my gosh, I need to get my son into something. I'm seeing the signs that
Hmm.
Robert is mentioning, that he's shutting down, he's not involved, engaged like he used to. And I wanna nip it at the bud. I want to be proactive. And they want to get into your program. Please tell the viewers more about your program and what you do with the young men and how they can get their sons involved.
I have a virtual program, yeah, empowering young men to thrive through trauma. It helps I work with them overcome the societal norms because we have to understand that
Mm,
masculinity is not the definition of a man being aggressive physically, but being able to show up in his daily life and show a stance of who his character is and what he values. I help them with the effective communication, helping them navigate to understand that communication is not just talking at, it's talking with and talking to be able to understand.
mm, mm. What do you find is the reaction of the boys when they're in your program? What has been the response to what you're telling us as mothers that we should be doing more of? When you do that with them, what do you see?
They're closed off because what we experience is we have a man show up and then it's for a short period of time. So we don't want to make ourselves vulnerable, open ourselves to that. So they're more closed off. So a big thing that I do is I'll have you introduce yourself and tell us one thing about you that we don't know. Even if it's a friend on here, tell us one thing about you that we don't know. And I have everyone go around on there and stand up or share it on the Zoom about about something that they love about themselves or what we don't know about you.
Wow.
And that helps because another person could be interested in music and you like to do music as well. That makes the connection for them. Okay, you like music because we're not easily quick to make a relationship like, women are. Y'all can, hey girl, we like, only time we can talk is when it's sports or we have some similar interests. And then after that,
Right.
we're finished talking and we go about our ways. They're not knowing that,
Wow.
that person is struggling inside and that person is hurting because
Mm.
we haven't dealt with our internal conflict.
Right. So we can't, because we haven't even acknowledged, because our sons haven't acknowledged it within themselves. It's very difficult for them to acknowledge pain in someone else.
Right.
Mm.
And it's difficult to make that connection with, especially if you had somebody that come in your life and they was there for maybe about a month and then you disappeared. And then you come in to meet another man. It's like, okay, well, what you got to offer? That the next person wound up leaving. So their mindset and their feelings and their motives is different because it's like, okay, I don't want to open up to this because I don't want you to disappear.
Mm. So they fear abandonment as well.
Yes, because we dealt with it.
Wow. Wow. We hear that all the time with girls. They struggle with abandonment issues, but
Hmm.
you don't often hear that boys feel like that and they fear someone
Hmm.
walking away from them. Like this is amazing. So you actually get the boys to open up and start doing the very thing that boys don't do, which is
Yes,
talk.
yes, 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 yes. It is a process,
Wow.
but the key is my biggest thing. I said it earlier is being able to invest.
Mm.
Invest not just in what they like, but who they want to become.
Wow. Say that again. Say that again.
Not to invest in just what they like, but who they want to become.
Wow.
The key to
Amazing.
understanding who they are is who they want to become. They have aspirations, they have dreams. And if they don't know what they want to do, they still aspire to be something in life. But if you're not making that investment to know just who they are on a platonic surface, then you're not going to be able to understand who they are when they want to share that big mega dream that they have.
Mm. And we don't know how to show up for them to be
No,
supportive because we don't
right,
even know what they want,
right.
much less.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's why this is
Wow.
important because then I just don't always do this for the bad things. I also do this write down. I take this and
The
say
good
write
thing.
down 5 things that you want to become in life, or 5 things that you dream of. Write down 5 things that you want to achieve within the next 90 days, and how can your family help you?
Mm.
Then I
It's I'm listening to you, Robert, and it's so much of what you do. I do with the girls, and I've always said, "Oh, I can't work with boys because boys don't talk." I'm like, we got to talk in my workshops. We got to
yes,
talk, and I'm
understood.
listening to you, and I'm like, they're talking. It
Yes,
might take a part, but it's the same with the girls. The girls come in the first few sessions, they're not always open. They
right,
have their guard up, they have their
right,
wall up. I
right.
didn't realize that boys, like I'm listening to, even with my two sons, and maybe it's because I have had open communication with my sons. I
Hmm.
didn't realize that most boys find it very difficult to express how they feel.
Right. You know why they feel like that? We all fear what in life? Change. Change for us is the unknown. So, in order for us to be able to accept change, we have to know what's on the other side of the unknown. And not a lot of times we don't know. But in order to help your son through life, we always tell him what to do, but we never give him the why aspect of it. If you give
And never,
somebody,
yeah, go ahead.
if you give somebody your why,
Hmm.
they will be able to navigate with you better. So if you let your son explain his why when he made that mistake, then you understand where his mindset was at that moment. It's not something he may continue to do, but at that moment, I was vulnerable. I was frustrated. At that moment, I didn't feel loved. At that moment, I just wanted to act out because I wanted attention. You got to understand the why aspect in life before you judge and condemn. Because if you understand his why, you're not going to understand his goal. You're not going to understand his mindset.
And you're going to respond in a way that's not helping him
Right.
at all. Wow. Wow. So when you say you do virtual programs, how can someone sign up, to be part of it? Like say they live in another state, outside of where you're headquartered, or just anywhere.
They can
How can they get enrolled?
go to my website, youngmenbecomingmen.org, and they can go there and send an email, and I'll respond within a day or two, and find out the pain points of what your son is experiencing, and will the parent be willing to be a part of some of the sessions as well? Because it's good to be able to work with your son, but he has to go back to that same toxic environment. Then
It
it's
can't be
right,
counterproductive, right?
right. Because
Right.
when I say that, it's like having a snake. You play with, you bite you run there, you get the shot to take the venom out, but you go back home and play with that same snake.
Right. Right. Now, do you work with siblings as well? Because what I've also noticed is that young girls, and this is why I said, our mission in our show is to empower and educate the women of our communities and the girls that they're raising, because oftentimes young girls mirror their mom. They
Yes.
mirror the person that reflects, their femininity or lack thereof. They mirror that person. Do you find that you see, when you do the family engagement, that you include the female siblings as
Yes.
well sometimes, because they're mirroring that aggressiveness or that
Yes.
tone or lack of grace? Yeah.
Yes, I do. I do. It's
Wow.
important. It's important. You can impact just one, and the other parts of the family is still has a traumatic mindset, still has the negative mindset. That
Mhm.
because then you're helping, but then he go right back into that mindset and that the the way he's being talked to, the way he's been treated, and your sister tease you, oh, you getting help from somebody, you
Mhm.
need no help,
Mhm.
but I need help. We all need help, because our family dynamics is not based on trauma. Our family dynamics is based on a strong relationship, a strong family legacy.
Right. Absolutely. You mentioned something to me that blew me away. Now, for those that, and just say your website one more time for those that want to find you. And if not just on your website, where can they find your social media handles as well if they want to reach out to you personally?
Our website is youngmenbecomingmen.org. On Instagram, I'm Robert Thomas Cooper Jr., my full name. Same thing as Facebook as well.
Yes, y'all have to reach out to him, because what I'm about to say, I thought I was doing something. I'm a two-time author, right? I'm like, I'm on my way. I'm doing something. And you mentioned that you was an author in your bio,
Yes,
but you've written 6 books,
yes,
Robert. You've
yes,
written 6 books.
yes.
Please tell the viewers about these books, because I love to read. So for those mothers that want to tap in and learn, and for young men to be able, please share the books and the topics of your books.
This book is A Young Man's Cry. This is the one I mentioned earlier about the young man who gives them principles of being a man, but they also can journal within the book. It has questions for them to journal.
Mm, I
Uh,
love it.
my other book is what I love is Every Family Has a Story. It gives tips about trauma and family legacy and our mindset, but they also can journal as well in the book.
So you make them, so you're constantly making them express themselves. I love it. You challenge them. You
Yes,
challenge them to acknowledge their feelings.
yes. My other book is Your Character Speaks Before You Do. And
Your character speaks before you do. Wow, that's true.
you can also journal in that book as well. That book is I can read one chapter for you. It talks about anger emotions. This is the emotions that we often hide behind. Anger emotions are fear, anxiety, confusion, frustration. As a young man and man dealing with the emotions of not having our fathers, we can become frustrated at our situations and feel lonely.
Mm, and that's so true.
I have another book. I don't have that one with me right now because I just sold out the whole 52 books of that one. It's
That's what I'm talking about.
Your Family Unforgiveness, Unspoken Unforgiveness. It,
Ooh,
it deals with
that sounds very interesting.
it deals with family legacy, family foundation, generational differences. As
Mhm.
parents, we're you're raising generational, different generations, and you're still holding on to the generation of what you was taught, but still trying to fit in your generation as well as your child's generation.
Mm,
And what's the five? I think next one is 5 Steps to Discover Your Purpose. I've sold out of that one
okay.
as well. And my last book, which I love the most, is The Authentic Man: Embracing Your Journey,
Wow. Why is that your favorite?
because it talks about a journey to healing and redefining. I provide steps of normalizing counseling conversations.
Mm,
I provide lead examples. Uh, Talk about seek support and connection, healing from emotional trauma, overcoming societal norms,
yeah.
helping them with their remarkable journey. It says embracing your remarkable journey, your inner value, independently or external judgment and comparison, is a transformative journey that leads to self-acceptance and self-fulfillment.
Mm, that's powerful. Ms. Kua, how can someone get your books? Where can they go purchase your books? How can they get their hands on your books and get it, where we can have either family dialogue, read it and pass it on, to the different ones in the family? How can someone get your books?
They can go to my website, youngmenbecomingamen.org, and they can scroll down to the last page, and that's where our book sales is at.
Wow, amazing. Viewers, if you haven't taken anything away, the one thing, and I will share, the one thing that I took away is understanding that men are vulnerable and just as sensitive, and that we have to be in tune with that sensitivity, because if not, you said it. You said it's almost like a one shot deal.
Yes, it is.
Once that's done, that's a one and done, huh?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. That's it. That's over. We will not allow ourselves to be exposed to being vulnerable again because we're hurt. And we're not going to allow ourselves to be hurt because we dealt with enough hurt as a child. And we still deal with hurt as a man because we don't understand the dynamics of our lives, and we don't understand what it is to be a man. So we're finding our way to becoming a man.
Hmm. And you're like, and men are like, as much as I can control, I'm not going to deal with anything that could potentially hurt me, because you showed me the potential that you could hurt that one time. That's
Right.
what I took from what you. Wow, amazing. Whereas girls, that's where we differ. We'll keep
Right.
on going for a while, right?
Because y'all led with emotion. Sometimes we're more logical. We think things over. It's like, okay, I'm not gonna put myself in that. And we only can deal with the emotional aspect of us is when we lose somebody, and that's somebody that we love.
Right, absolutely. I always end my show with letting our guests, be able to leave the final, thought that you want to leave our viewers that are watching. And there's this Cooper is, I mean, blowing up our speed here. So I love it. Thank you, Mrs. Cooper, for your support. She's, been just intently listening and leaving comments, and I've been posting them up as she's been leaving them on there. But for our other viewers who are just intently listening as well, and taking in the information that you are talking about, your final thought, like the one thing that you want our viewers to walk away with, particularly our mothers and our sisters, our aunties, our grandmothers that are listening in and saying, we have the grandsons, the sons, the nephews, and the brothers. What's the one final thought you want to leave before we end our show today?
Your environment doesn't dictate your outcome. Your determination defines your outcome. So if you're determined to how you want to see your son and how you want to see your family, then your outcome will be greater.
Oh, that is amazing. I love that. Power punch is what they call those power punches. Say a few, but it says a lot, right?
Yes.
That was a lot. That was a mouthful right there. Oh, we could talk all day, and we're
Yes.
going to
Yes.
definitely have to do some collaborative work
Yes, we
together.
do. I would love to come there and speak with your young ladies.
I was just going to say that we got to talk offline. I need for you
Yes.
to come and talk to our girls, because they need to hear this, because they're the future mothers of
Yes.
sons. And
Yes.
they need to learn at an early age the communication, the effective
Right.
communication that
Right.
is going to keep the lines of communication open. And even if it
Right.
starts with their brothers, starts with, who's in their family, then they can
Right.
raise kings, when
Right.
they become moms as well. So
Right.
thank you so much for
Thank
dropping
you.
these gems,
Thank you. Thank you.
for us. And it opened up my mind to a lot of things that, even though my sons are older, I
Yes.
need to keep in mind constantly
Yes.
when I'm having that dialogue with them, so I can make sure I continue to keep the lines of communication open with my son. So thank
Yes.
you so much for this amazing show tonight for our young men. Mothers, take them notes, study them, get your boys enrolled in his program, visit his website, get them in there, and make it a family thing, make it a holistic approach where the whole family is being healed and benefited from, and just growing together, taking this journey together of healing and growing and evolving and empowerment. So that's what our show is all about. Thank you again,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Cooper, for
Thank you.
being on the show.
Thank you.
Stay tuned. In 2 weeks, October 6th, we're going to have another dynamic speaker coming to the show, talking about her recent book that she just posted up, and it's in the month of October. It's October 6th. We're going to have our next show, which, as you know, is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So keeping in line with what we're talking about in healing and trauma, we're going to be talking about, she says, in plain sight. And this is a woman who was dealing with living and being married to someone who was a narcissist. And so she's going to be sharing some power, talk about healing and trauma. She's
Yeah.
going to be sharing that. So We're here again to impact. So stay tuned. Hit that like button. If you have not subscribed to our talk show, Conversations with Asia on YouTube, subscribe to our channel, hit the subscribe button, and more importantly, also hit the notification bell. So anytime we have new content coming, you will not miss it because we will send you a notification of our next show. And if you just chiming in, I see some people coming in now. If you've missed the conversation, the amazing conversation that I just had with Mr. Cooper and him giving us mothers a little spanking here, letting us know how we can be better mothers and better, teachers to our daughters as well, and way showers to our daughters. Hit the replay button and you can take a look and listen and take the notes that you need to do that. So with that being said, everyone, enjoy your evening, enjoy your weekend, be impactful, do something good for yourself, do something good for someone that you care about, and make a difference in the world today. Thank you, Mr. Cooper.
Thank you.